Dad slid the sale contract across my parents' dining room table like he was dealing cards. The paper stopped in front of my coffee cup, already marked with yellow tabs where my signature was supposed to go, and my mother stood behind him with her arms folded, smiling like the decision had been made weeks ago. "Sign before you ruin this deal," he said, tapping the last page with 2 fingers. When I asked why Grandpa's orchard was being sold without me, Mom said, "Be grateful you're getting anything." "My name is Nora Whitaker. I'm 33 years old." That was the first moment I understood my parents weren't asking for my permission. They were trying to get my signature before I learned what they had already filed. The contract said Golden Ridge Development LLC was buying Whitaker Orchard for $1.28 million. 31 acres of peach trees, irrigation lines, the old packing shed, and the white farmhouse where my grandfather used to keep a coffee can full of tractor keys above the refrigerator. But the seller line didn't say estate of Harold Whitaker. It said Kenneth Whitaker and Marlene Whitaker, husband and wife. My parents. I read that line 3 times because my brain kept rejecting it. Grandpa had died 11 months earlier. We had all stood under a green funeral tent while my father cried into a folded handkerchief and told everyone the orchard would stay in the family as long as the Lord allowed. I believed him. I believed all of them. I was the granddaughter who had driven Grandpa to cardiology appointments, paid his property taxes online when his hands got shaky, and filled out his Medicare forms because he hated passwords. And now, somehow, my parents were selling the land as if it had always belonged to them. "Where's the probate paperwork?" I asked. Dad's jaw tightened. "You don't need to worry about that." "I do if you want me to sign," Mom laughed once, short and sharp. "You always make things difficult, Nora. Your grandfather would be embarrassed." That sentence did something to me. Not because it was loud, because it was rehearsed. I looked at the contract again. There was an addendum offering me $25,000 in exchange for a quitclaim deed releasing any potential heirship claim, known or unknown. Known or unknown. Those 3 words sat on the page like a trap. I pushed the papers back across the table. Why would I have a potential claim if you own it? Neither of them answered. My father took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Your grandfather made arrangements before he died. He wanted me to handle the property. This sale is the best thing for everyone." "Then show me the will." The room changed. My mother's smile disappeared first. Then Dad's hand moved from his glasses to the folder, closing it slowly, as if the paper inside had become dangerous just because I'd named it. "There was no will," he said, but he said it too quickly. I left their house without signing. My mother followed me onto the porch, her voice low enough that Dad couldn't hear through the screen door. "You have no idea what you're stepping into," she said. At the time, I thought it was a threat. Later, I realized it was a confession. The next morning, I went to the county records office before work. I didn't even know exactly what I was looking for. I just knew that land didn't vanish from an estate into my parents' names without a document trail. The clerk at the front desk was a woman named Denise Carver, with silver hair, cat-eye glasses, and the exhausted patience of someone who had watched families destroy each other over legal descriptions for 30 years. I gave her Grandpa's full name, Harold Eugene Whitaker. She typed it into the land records system, clicked twice, and said, "There was a deed recorded 4 months before his death." My stomach dropped. She turned the monitor slightly, not enough for me to read everything, but enough for me to see my father's name. Warranty deed. Grantor, Harold Eugene Whitaker. Grantees, Kenneth Paul Whitaker and Marlene Joyce Whitaker. Consideration, $10 and other valuable consideration. Recorded 9 days after Grandpa's stroke. I heard the blood rushing in my ears. "That can't be right," I whispered. "He was in the hospital then." Denise stopped typing. Not dramatically. Not like in movies. Just stopped. Then she looked back at the screen and asked, very carefully, "Was he competent to sign documents at that time?" I remembered Grandpa in the ICU, trying to ask for water around a tube. I remembered my father telling the nurses, "I'm his power of attorney." I remembered Mom taking a folder into the waiting room and telling me it was just insurance stuff. I don't think so, I said. Denise clicked into the scanned image of the deed. The notary stamp belonged to a woman named Lila Morton. The witness line had my mother's handwriting. I knew it instantly. Her capital M always looked like two sharp mountains. Then Denise frowned. There's an older file attached to this parcel, she said. It was scanned from microfilm years ago, but it's indexed under the old orchard tract number. She opened it. A grainy black and white image loaded slowly across the screen. Last Will and Testament of Harold Eugene Whitaker. My hands went cold. Denise leaned closer, read the first page, then the second. Her face changed so subtly, I almost missed it. She went pale around the mouth. Oh, she whispered. What? She pointed to one line near the bottom of the page. I, Harold Eugene Whitaker, leave Whitaker Orchard in equal shares to my son, Kenneth Paul Whitaker, and my granddaughter, Nora Elaine Whitaker, and no sale of the orchard shall occur without the written consent of both beneficiaries. Denise looked at me like she had just handed me a loaded weapon. Honey, she said quietly, your parents prayed no one ever found this. I stared at the scanned will until the words blurred. Equal shares. Written consent of both beneficiaries. My parents had sat across from me with a sale contract and acted like the $25,000 was generosity. They weren't buying peace. They were buying my silence. Can I get a copy? I asked. Denise didn't move right away. Her eyes stayed on the monitor, flicking from the will to the deed recorded after Grandpa's stroke. You can, she said. But Nora, listen to me carefully. A copy from records helps. But if this was never admitted to probate, you need an attorney. Today. Was it recorded properly? She printed the first page, then checked the backside of the scan. It was lodged with the county 12 years ago, probably for safekeeping. Some people used to do that. It doesn't transfer title by itself, but it proves the will existed before your grandfather died. The printer hummed behind her. I gripped the counter because my knees felt loose. My father told me there was no will. Denise glanced toward the hallway, then lowered her voice. People say a lot of things when land is worth 7 figures. She handed me the pages still warm from the machine. Grandpa's signature was at the bottom, shaky but unmistakable. Harold E. Whitaker. The H looped wide, like it always had on birthday cards. For a second, I wasn't in the county office anymore. I was 10 years old, sitting beside him on the tailgate of his truck, peach juice running down my wrist while he told me, "Land remembers who loved it, Nora Bird." I folded the copies into my purse like they were fragile. When I got to my car, I had 12 missed calls. 5 from Dad, 7 from Mom. Then a text from my father, "Do not do anything stupid. Call me now." I didn't call. I drove straight to the office of Reeves E. Calder, the only probate firm in town whose sign didn't look like it had given up during the Reagan administration. The receptionist said, "Mr. Reeves was booked for 3 weeks. I put the will copy on her desk and said, "My parents are trying to sell my grandfather's orchard without my consent." 10 minutes later, I was in a conference room with an attorney named Elise Calder. She read silently, her pen tapping once against her legal pad. Then she read the deed. "Who prepared this deed?" she asked. "I don't know." "Was your grandfather hospitalized on the date it was signed?" "Yes." "Do you have records?" "I can get them." She leaned back. "Then we may have undue influence, lack of capacity, possibly fraud. The will complicates their sale significantly. But there's a problem." Of course there was. What problem? If title is currently in your parents' names because of this deed, the development company may be trying to close before anyone challenges it. Once they transfer to a buyer, unwinding it becomes more expensive. We need to move fast. How fast? Before closing. I swallowed. They wanted me to sign yesterday. Elise's eyes sharpened. Did the contract mention a closing date? Friday. It was Tuesday. She stood, already gathering papers. Then we file a petition to open probate, a notice of will, and a lis pendens against the property. That puts the world on notice. There's a dispute. I didn't understand every word, but I understood enough. It meant stop them. Elise asked me to email every text, voicemail, and photo I had. Hospital records, tax payment receipts, anything showing my relationship with Grandpa and his condition after the stroke. By the time I left, I had paid a retainer with money I'd been saving for a new roof. At 4:12 p.m., my father was waiting outside my apartment. He stood beside his truck with both hands in his pockets, looking less angry than scared. That scared me more. "You went to the courthouse," he said. I didn't ask how he knew. "Yes." His face hardened. "You don't understand what your grandfather did." "I understand he left me half the orchard." Dad stepped toward me. He was confused. That will was old. He changed his mind. "Then where's the newer will?" His mouth twitched. "There wasn't one." Behind him, Mom sat in the passenger seat, watching through the windshield. She didn't get out. She didn't need to. I could feel her hate from 20 feet away. Dad lowered his voice. "If this sale falls through, your mother and I lose everything." "Why?" He looked away. That was when I noticed the envelope in his hand. White, creased, my name written across it in Grandpa's handwriting. Dad saw me looking and shoved it into his jacket pocket. My heartbeat thudded once hard. "What is that?" "Nothing." "Dad." He backed toward the truck. "Sign the release, Nora." "Take the money. Let the dead stay dead." Then he climbed in, and Mom smiled at me through the glass as they drove away. But Dad had made one mistake. When he pulled the envelope from his pocket, something had slipped loose and fallen beside his boot. A small, brass key. On the tag, written in Grandpa's hand, were 3 words, "Packing Shed Safe." I picked up the brass key with shaking fingers. Packing Shed Safe. Grandpa had kept 3 safes in his life. One in the farmhouse closet for cash, one at the bank for bonds he forgot about, and one in the packing shed, bolted beneath the old sorting table, where he stored things people shouldn't touch unless I'm dead or stupid. His words, not mine. I called Elise from my car. "Do not go alone," she said immediately. "It's my family's property." "It is disputed property. Your parents may claim you're trespassing. Also, if there are documents in that safe, we need a witness." So I called the only person I trusted who still knew every back road to the orchard, my cousin Ben. Ben was my mother's nephew, technically, but he had stopped coming to Thanksgiving after Mom accused him of stealing attention when he got sober. He answered on the second ring. "I need a favor," I said. "If it involves your parents, I already hate it." "It involves Grandpa's orchard." There was a pause. Then, "I'll bring bolt cutters." The orchard looked abandoned when we got there near dusk. Rows of peach trees stood black against a pink sky, their branches still bare from winter pruning. The farmhouse windows were dark. A Golden Ridge development sign had been hammered near the gravel entrance. "Coming soon, Ridgeview Estates." I nearly threw up. Ben parked behind the packing shed, so his truck couldn't be seen from the road. "You okay?" "No." "Good. Means you're paying attention." The shed smelled like dust, diesel, and old fruit crates. I found the sorting table under a tarp. Beneath it, exactly where I remembered, was a square steel safe with chipped gray paint. The little brass key slid in perfectly. Inside were 2 folders, a stack of photographs, and a sealed envelope addressed to me. Not my father. Not family. Me. Nora Bird. I sat on an overturned crate because my legs stopped working. Ben looked away while I opened it. Grandpa's handwriting was cramped, the way it got when his arthritis flared. "Nora, if you are reading this, someone has tried to make you believe I left the orchard without protecting you. I did not. Your father asked me to sign it over more than once. I refused. He said I owed him. Maybe I did fail him in ways fathers fail sons, but I do not owe him your inheritance. I leave him half because he is my son. I leave you half because you are the one who loved the land without seeing dollar signs. Do not let them sell without you. There is more in the red folder." I pressed the letter to my mouth and cried without making a sound. Ben muttered, "I'm going to stand guard before I start committing felonies." The red folder was labeled Kenneth. Loans. Inside were copies of promissory notes, bank letters, and handwritten records. My father had borrowed against equipment, against future crops, against anything Grandpa would co-sign. Then came a document that made my stomach twist. A private loan agreement. Kenneth and Marlene Whitaker owed $412,000 to Golden Ridge Development LLC, due upon transfer of Whitaker Orchard. They weren't selling because they wanted to, I whispered. They already sold themselves. The second folder held medical notes. Grandpa had written dates after his stroke. Ken brought deed again. Told him no. Couldn't hold pen well. Marlene, angry. 2 days later, notary came. I refused. Ken said Nora would get nothing if I fought. And the final entry, shakier than all the rest, if deed appears after stroke, it is not mine. Ben read over my shoulder and went pale. Headlights swept across the shed wall. We froze. A truck door slammed outside. Then my mother's voice cut through the dusk. "Nora, I know you're in there," Ben whispered. "Back door?" "There isn't one." Mom stepped into the doorway, holding a flashlight like a weapon. Dad stood behind her, breathing hard. Her eyes went straight to the open safe. For once, she didn't smirk. "You had no right," she said. I stood with Grandpa's letter in my hand. "Actually, I think I'm the only one who did." Dad looked broken. Mom looked furious. Then she did something I'll never forget. She turned to my father and hissed, "I told you to burn it!" Ben's phone was already recording. Mom saw the screen. Her face changed. Dad whispered, "Marlene, stop." But she didn't. She lunged for the red folder. Ben stepped between us, and she slapped him so hard the sound cracked through the shed. That was when sheriff's lights flashed red and blue across the open doorway. Elise had called them the moment I told her where I was going. Deputy Harris walked in, looked at the open safe, my mother's raised hand, Ben's bleeding lip, and the folders clutched to my chest. "Well," he said slowly, "seems like we interrupted a family meeting." Deputy Harris separated us like we were strangers at a bar fight, instead of family standing in Grandpa's packing shed. Mom kept saying Ben had attacked her emotionally, which even under the circumstances was impressive. Ben held a rag to his split lip and said, "Put that in the report exactly like she said it." Dad didn't say much. He just watched the folders. That was how I knew they mattered. Elise arrived 20 minutes later, in heels completely wrong for gravel, and a face that could have frozen boiling water. She photographed everything before anyone touched it again. The safe, the key, the folders, Grandpa's letter, the loan agreement with Golden Ridge. Then she looked at my parents. "If either of you removes, destroys, alters, or conceals any document related to Harold Whitaker's estate or this property, I will ask the court for sanctions and refer it to the district attorney." Mom scoffed. "You can't threaten us on our own land." Elise smiled without warmth. "That's currently in dispute." The next morning, Elise filed everything. By noon, a lease pendens had been recorded against the orchard. By 3, Golden Ridge's attorney had called her office 6 times. By 5, my father called me. I almost didn't answer. But Elise told me to let everything go to voicemail. So I stood in my kitchen and listened as his voice filled the room. "Nora, please. They're going to sue us. Your mother signed things. I signed things. We were trying to fix a bad situation. Your grandfather didn't understand what kind of debt we were in." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice cracked. "I was going to pay you after closing more than the 25. I just needed the sale to happen first." I saved the message. Then Mom left one. "You selfish little girl. You think that old man loved you more than his own son? He used you to punish your father. If you destroy this family, that is on you." I saved that, too. The hearing was set for Friday morning, the same day the sale was supposed to close. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No jury, no drama, just wooden benches, fluorescent lights, and Judge Callahan flipping through papers like she had seen every ugly version of love money could buy. Golden Ridge, Dad looked 10 years older than he had at the dining room table. Elise argued first. She presented the will, the hospital timeline, the deed signed after Grandpa's stroke, and the safe documents. She didn't call my parents thieves. She didn't have to. She just laid out the dates and let them rot in the open. Golden Ridge's attorney claimed they were good faith purchasers. Judge Callahan looked over her glasses. Hard to close in good faith when a granddaughter was being pressured to sign a quitclaim days before closing. Then Elise played Dad's voicemail. My father lowered his head. Mom stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. When the recording ended, the courtroom was silent. Judge Callahan granted a temporary restraining order blocking the sale. She ordered the original deed, notary records, medical records, and communications with Golden Ridge preserved. She also appointed a special administrator for Grandpa's estate until the will could be formally admitted. I thought I'd feel victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. As people stood to leave, Dad turned around. Nora? He said. Mom grabbed his sleeve. Kenneth. He pulled away from her. For 1 second, he looked like the father who taught me to ride a bike between orchard rows. Then he said, Your grandfather wrote another letter. My breath caught. Mom's face went white. Don't. Dad swallowed. It's at the house. In the blue Bible. Mom slapped him across the face in the middle of the courtroom. The sound echoed. The bailiff moved fast. Judge Callahan shouted, Mrs. Whitaker! But I was already looking at my father, because he was crying. Not angry tears, not manipulative tears, terrified ones. Elise grabbed my arm. We need to get to that farmhouse before she does. We didn't make it. By the time we reached the orchard, smoke was rising behind the farmhouse. The back porch was on fire. Flames licked up the siding toward the kitchen windows. My mother stood in the driveway barefoot, holding Grandpa's blue Bible against her chest. And when she saw me, she smiled. Then she dropped it into the flames. I screamed and ran toward the porch. Elise caught my arm so hard her nails dug through my sleeve. Nora, no! The Bible! The heat hit my face like an open oven. Smoke rolled under the eaves, black and thick, and for 1 stupid second all I could see was Grandpa sitting at the kitchen table with that blue Bible beside his coffee, receipts and seed catalogs tucked between the pages. Dad shoved past me. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed the long-handled garden rake, leaning by the porch steps, hooked the Bible through the flames, and dragged it off the burning boards. Then he stamped at the sparks with his shoes until the leather smoked. Mom screamed, You coward! Deputy Harris pulled into the drive behind us, followed by the fire truck. He got to Mom first. She fought him like a stranger, kicking gravel, pearls bouncing against her throat. Dad dropped to his knees beside the Bible. His palms were blistered. The cover was charred at the edges, but the middle had survived. When Elise opened it carefully with the tip of a pen, ash lifted into the air like gray snow. There was an envelope tucked in the Book of Proverbs. It was singed, but sealed. On the front, Grandpa had written one name, Kenneth. Dad made a sound I had never heard from him before. Not grief, not fear, shame. Elise let him open it while the firefighters beat back the porch flames. Grandpa's letter was short. Ken, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you are standing at the fork I feared you would come to. I know about the debts. I know about Golden Ridge. I know Marlene thinks the orchard is the answer to everything. It is not. Do not steal from Nora to save yourself. A man does not become less ruined by ruining his child. I have left you half because you are my son. I have left Nora half because she will keep you honest if you let her, for once in your life, choose blood over pride. Dad read it once, then again. Then he pressed the burned paper to his chest and sobbed, while the back porch collapsed behind him. That letter changed everything. Not because it made him innocent. It didn't, but because 2 days later, My father walked into Elise's office and told the truth. He admitted Grandpa had refused to sign the deed after the stroke. He admitted Mom arranged the notary. He admitted Golden Ridge knew there were family complications and pushed them to get my release before closing. He brought emails, texts, and the original folder Mom thought he had destroyed. The forged deed was voided. The will was admitted. Golden Ridge withdrew, then quietly settled after Elise threatened to add them to the fraud case. Mom took a plea deal for arson, evidence destruction, and fraud-related charges. She blamed Dad, Grandpa, me, the county clerk, the judge, the weather, and finally, bad energy from that land. I did not visit her. Dad avoided prison by cooperating, but he lost almost everything else. The farmhouse was repaired with insurance money, though the kitchen always smelled faintly of smoke when it rained. He moved into a small rental outside town and started working at a feed store. For a long time, I didn't know what to do with my half of the orchard. Sell it? Keep it? Let it go wild? Then he didn't ask for forgiveness. He just said, "Your grandpa would be proud." I looked past him at the rows of trees Grandpa had left me to protect. "No," I said softly. "He'd be relieved." That evening, after everyone left, I walked to the oldest peach tree on the hill. Its trunk was twisted and scarred, half hollow from lightning years before, but its branches were heavy with fruit. I sat beneath it with Grandpa's burned Bible in my lap. The edges were black. The pages smelled like smoke. But inside the cover, his handwriting was still there. "Land remembers who loved it." I pressed my palm to the bark and finally cried. Not because I had lost my family, but because I had found the truth they tried to bury. And above me, peaches glowed gold in the last light, like the orchard was answering back. If you would have fought for Grandpa's orchard too, subscribe and tell me in the comments. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. And if you want more stories like this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel.